Hello, thank you for joining the MDICX series webinar, Accelerate Sustainable Capability Information Session. My name is Desiree Steele, and I'm the Program Manager for the Case for Quality initiative here at MDIC, along with Alan Baumule, who is the Program Director. Today, we will be hosting an informational session on our recently launched pilot study, Accelerate Sustainable Capability. Today's agenda is as follows. We will learn more information on the ASC pilot study from our program chair, Catherine Merrill from Medtronic, followed by our stakeholders and working group members, and lastly, closing remarks and ASC pilot study future activities. And now I will turn things over to Catherine Merrill.
Welcome to everyone who's joined us on our webinar. And as Desiree said, my name is Catherine Merrill. I'm a Global Quality Regulatory Program Director at Medtronic, and also on behalf of MDIC, I'm acting as the Program Chair for the Accelerate Sustainable Capability Pilot Study, also known as the ASC Pilot Study. So throughout this process, I've had the privilege of working with a very experienced team from FDA, both CDRH and ORA, as well as ISACA, also known as CIMI, management control, and members from industry like Baxter, Zimmer Biomet, Edwards, and Medtronic. And you'll have an opportunity, like Desiree said, to hear from representatives of each group later in the webinar. So before I get into the details, I wanted to introduce the overall purpose of the Accelerate Sustainable Capability Pilot Study. And that is to facilitate a partnership between the FDA, MDIC, and industry to help sites address compliance issues and improve product quality at the same time. The reason why the FDA is partnering with MDIC and industry to help design how the future will look is that they have recognized that a singular focus on compliance has not resulted in an equivalent increase year over year in product quality in the field. And since we are already seeing that the CIMI appraisal process is encouraging continuous improvement above and beyond compliance at manufacturing sites without compliance concerns, the real question is why not leverage what we've learned at these compliance sites to help sites that are mostly focused on raising their level of compliance. So this slide really is to provide you with a high-level timeline of the work we've completed so far to design and release the new pilot study. So first, back in 2017, that's when the Voluntary Improvement Program, or you also know it as the VIP pilot, was initiated. And this is a pilot where sites are appraised annually by CIMI. And then the sites report quarterly at checkpoints with CIMI about their continuous improvement status. And also there are performance metrics that are provided to the FDA. And to encourage continuous improvement, there are regulatory modifications provided to participants. In 2019, MDIC and industry began to engage on it in an early working group to begin defining the pilot. And the general feedback from industry and others that were aware of the VIP is that we're already helping compliance sites improve. Why not use our learnings to help sites that are more focused on achieving a higher level of compliance? It was very early, and actually going back, the BAA with MDIC and FDA was approved in 2019 as well. And the thing about this is that is where the funding comes from for the pilot study for both the CIMI appraisal and the residual risk assessment, which you'll hear about in future slides. So in 2020, the official working group was put together, and we continued to have membership from CDRH, ORA, MDIC, and industry groups. And we have worked over this past year to stand up the pilot study by completing a detailed program definition document that goes into every detail of the pilot. We developed a formal online application process that you guys will be able to the MDIC webpage, and Desiree will give you the link to that later in this webinar. The overall pilot study and the detailed program definition document has been approved through the OCC, ORA, CDRH, and the OHT. And so the team was able to use that detailed program definition document to create playbooks and frequently asked questions that would help anyone who was interested in participating in the pilot. And the program was released on 7/29. So we released it both on the MDIC website and the FDA website. I'm happy to announce that our first participant was accepted into the pilot study in September. So with that, what I wanted to do with this slide is to really walk you step by step through the details of the pilot study. So it's intended to give you an understanding of the construct of the pilot. It might not answer all the questions that you have. So at the end of this webinar, Desiree will be providing you with links and contact emails to get you in touch with the answers you may need, but I'm hoping this slide will be a good start. So first, I wanted to start with the program summary. So the pilot study leverages lessons learned from the VIP program, as I mentioned earlier, and it modifies its use for sites that have identified compliance concerns or are under a compliance action. And the goal of the pilot study is to test a methodology for providing systemic improvement to enable compliance actions to be closed faster and more sustainably, while at the same time ensuring objective metrics and residual risk assessments are in place to provide the agency oversight of product quality throughout the process. The main elements that make up the pilot study are 7. First, it's an 18-month pilot study that the timeline begins following the initial appraisal at the site. The second one is the CIMI appraisal. Then there's a quarterly residual risk assessment that's completed by a company called Management Control, which you'll hear from later in this webinar. And this residual risk assessment is completed using publicly available MAUDE data. Next, similar to VIP, there's a quarterly report of the continuous improvement progress to CIMI and a quarterly report of performance metrics to the FDA. And there's a regular collection of lessons learned throughout the duration of the pilot. And the goal of this is to help shape subsequent activities and next steps following the pilot. There's also, when applicable, a reinspection that will not only provide the FDA what it typically is looking for during that reinspection, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the next slide, but also it'll give us an additional data point regarding the effectiveness of the pilot. So for those of you who are familiar with VIP, you will see that it's similar, but all the activities are focused around the processes that were associated with the compliance concerns that were identified. So for instance, thinking of the CIMI appraisal, when you scope that appraisal, you will be doing so around those processes that are associated with the compliance action. As far as the benefits of the program, what the team expects is that the residual risk tool result will help sites prioritize improvements with the greatest potential to impact product quality. And they will also benefit from the organizational excellence opportunities identified during the CIMI appraisal that can help them sustain compliance as well as to improve product quality at the same time. And this also provides sites with a really excellent and unique opportunity to partner with both the FDA and MDIC to improve. And last but not least, as I mentioned earlier, the cost of the pilot is covered by MDIC. So for those of you familiar with VIP, this means that the cost of your CIMI appraisal is covered by MDIC, as well as the residual risk tool assessment by Management Control. So as you're listening to this summary, you may be asking, what are the expectations of a pilot site? So first would be the action plan. They would be responsible for creating an action plan consisting of the compliance gaps, which must be addressed. They must also consider the information that is provided to them with the residual risk tool results, which acts as an input to that action plan, and it can help them prioritize the gaps that they identified during the CMMI appraisal. Next, the site must engage in quarterly checkpoints with CMMI, where they will report out on their action plan status, as well as submit performance metrics to FDA on a quarterly basis. And finally, there's an expectation of transparency throughout the duration of the pilot, similar to VIP, the VIP program. So lastly, I wanted to review who's eligible to apply for this pilot. So there will be a total of 9 pilot sites with preference for 2 or more self-identifying sites, 2 or more sites with 483s but no compliance action, and 2 or more sites with a warning letter. So this last summary slide I'll be going over is about the information that will be shared with the FDA, as it's something I know that participating sites will be asking about. So first, as a part of the CMMI appraisal process, the practice areas covered during a CMMI appraisal will be provided to the FDA. And this is an expanded set of practice areas when compared to the 11 that are assessed during the VIP program. Next, we have the high-level results from the CMMI appraisal, which is similar to VIP. And again, also like VIP, I wanted to state that there's really not an expectation of a specific score that the site needs to achieve. It really is about determining, can the CMMI appraisal model be used to identify systemic continuous improvement opportunities that can be used to help the site on their journey to substantial compliance. The next one is the action plan, and the FDA will have access to the initial residual risk tool results, also the impact prioritization results, which will be leveraged as an input to the initial action plan that's developed by the site. And so you'll have the action plan and the details behind what you're planning to do in that action plan. And this is an excellent opportunity for the site to partner with the FDA to improve. And finally, for the quarterly checkpoint, there's a residual risk assessment that is an input to that checkpoint. And then there's the action plan status of red, yellow, or green will be shared with the FDA. Not the details of the action plan after they see the initial action plan, but they will need to determine what is the progress to the plan that you've stated and what is the status of that. And then lastly, the performance metrics will be sent to the FDA. It's similar to VIP, except for all of these activities really are associated around those processes that were identified with potential compliance concerns. So the FDA will be using this information to learn from the pilot and to provide input to the site action plan. And I also want to highlight what the pilot impact will be on the FDA inspection. And I wanted to note that the FDA does not intend to conduct routine inspections during the pilot, but post the pilot activities, it will follow its current inspection work plan. So now I know that that was a very quick tour of the ASC pilot study, but now you have an opportunity to hear from representatives of our ASC Working Group. First, I wanted to introduce that you are going to be hearing from ISACA, where we get the CMMI appraisal from Kim Kaplan, who's a program manager at ISACA. Next, you'll hear from Larry Magert, a principal at Management Control, who's responsible for the residual risk tool. Then you'll hear from Blady Vunicki, who's the Case for Quality team lead at CDRH at FDA. And finally, we'll close out this section of the webinar with insights from Raymond Seda, a Senior Director of Compliance and Quality at Medtronic. And with that, I will hand it over to Kim.
Thanks, Catherine. Again, this is Kim Kaplan, Program Manager at ISACA. Happy to be talking with all of you. So Catherine mentioned CMMI a couple times, and I thought some of you might have the question, well, what is CMMI? It's the Capability Maturity Model Integration, It's a collection of industry best practices that have been put together into a performance improvement tool to help organizations achieve measurable goals aligned with their objectives. Now, this was originally developed in the late 1980s when the Department of Defense contracted Carnegie Mellon University to identify what organizational behaviors would increase the likelihood of work being completed on time, within budget, and of high quality. Now, the model has gone through multiple evolutions since then, and some of the key components in the model today include a focus on leadership setting the strategy and aligning organizational goals to departmental and individual goals, measuring success against those goals, and providing processes, training, funding, and other support so that work can continue as intended even during times of high stress or turnover. Organizations can be appraised against any subset of the model practices. So that gets us to what's an appraisal. Well, during an appraisal, there's a trained and experienced appraisal team that works with an organization to understand the company culture, the business objectives, and how work is performed, primarily by talking to those people who do the work throughout the product lifecycle, as well as management and leadership groups. The information that's collected is evaluated against those CMMI practices being considered in order to identify any gaps and opportunities to improve how work is performed. So this is already being used in the Case for Quality Voluntary Improvement Program. We're leveraging a tailored version of the CMMI framework and appraisal methodology in order to provide a systemic view of organizational performance within medical device manufacturing firms. And this view goes beyond the current regulatory requirements to provide a holistic view of the organization. In this program, as Catherine's described, there are a number of ways that we check in with an organization after providing the initial opportunities to track progress and provide support. And by focusing on continuous improvement, participants have been able to advance their objectives in patient safety. For example, we've seen faster complaint closure and reduced defects. So how does this fit into the ASC pilot study? Well, we believe that we can leverage the success that we've seen in VIP to help organizations that are focused on compliance to identify improvement opportunities that not only address those compliance gaps with a slightly narrow focus, but also broadening that focus a bit to provide systemic solutions that can help reduce the risk of a recurrence of that compliance gap. And with that, I will turn it over to another working group member, Larry Mager, who's a principal at Management Control.
Thank you, Kimberly. There does exist an objective to provide oversight to ensure patient safety is not compromised as a result of the ASC pilot study activity. Management Control has been asked to provide a post-market surveillance solution that enables the participating manufacturers to actively measure and monitor the safety of their devices within the healthcare market. To achieve this, the residual risk tool we've provided compares the level of safety associated with the use of a medical device against the level of safety that is inherent with the use of competitively marketed devices. This tool converts raw post-market data into usable information that then enables us to continuously measure and monitor patient safety. The output of the residual risk tool features a summary heat map with a color-coded indication of the risk associated with each of the ASC pilot study participants' products. For example, products highlighted in red will provide an indication that there may exist an unreasonable risk of harm that appears to be associated with a specific product and that should be further investigated. This information will be used as an input to the ASC pilot study participants' action plan to help them to prioritize improvement activity associated with risk control and patient safety. The heat map results will also be provided as an input to the quarterly checkpoints that will be conducted by CMMI. This additional oversight will ensure that any changes in the heat map are considered throughout the management of the pilot study. Unfortunately, We don't have enough time today to provide a detailed explanation of just how the tool works. However, we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Just ask. I'm going to turn it over now to Bleda Bonici, FDA Case for Quality Team Lead at CDRH.
Hello, I am Bleda Bonici with the FDA Case for Quality team. I'm a team lead and have worked on the Case for Quality efforts for a little while now. The FDA's participation in the ASC pilot is an example of our continued efforts to ensure patients and providers have access to safe and effective, high-quality medical devices. Both CDRH and ORA were partners in developing and designing the pilot study. Therefore, we are in full support of this pilot study. FDA has said that during the pilot study, the FDA intends to forego planned routine inspections for participating manufacturers. However, the agency intends to continue to conduct for-cause inspections of such manufacturers as necessary and appropriate. This is intended to give the participants the opportunity to complete the actions listed on their organization's action plan. As Catherine mentioned, the goal of the pilot was to develop an approach that tailors successful elements of the Case for Quality Voluntary Improvement Program, or as you may know, VIP, for manufacturers whose quality system requires assistance in achieving or sustaining regulatory compliance. We've learned through the Case for Quality VIP pilot that this venue provides an opportunity to proactively and more transparently engage with the agency. It is an opportunity to build relationships between the agency and the organization enrolled. The intent to promote continuous improvement and organizational excellence. The agency's goal is to get manufacturers in a state of sustainable compliance and structure their system for continuous improvement. The pilot study provides an opportunity to fix the root causes of the problem. We've learned through the Case for Quality VIP that the process has helped shape and as well as change the culture of the organization as well. FDA will still continue to monitor product safety through the quality maturity appraisal conducted by CIMI, as you've heard from Kimberly. The Manufacturing Control Inc., as mentioned by Larry, who will perform the residual risk assessment, as well as the agency will continue to receive quarterly performance metrics, the residual risk assessments, as well as status of the action plan that the organization will be conducting. Lastly, as you'll hear from Desiree from MDIC at the end of the webinar, and as echoed by other stakeholders during their talk, the Case for Quality team is also happy to meet with you and further discuss the opportunity with you. If you have questions or are not sure if the pilot study is a good fit for your organization, please feel free to reach out to caseforquality@fda.hhs.gov. And now I will turn it over to Raymond Seda, who will provide an overview of the industry perspective of the pilot study.
Hello, everyone. My name is Raymond Seda. I'm part of the representative of the industry under the ACS Working Group, and I've been involved with several Case for Quality initiatives over the past 3 years. So today I'll provide a high-level brief from the industry perspective on this session, and would like to summarize on a few themes which I believe are the most relevant and impactful for the industry and FDA working relationship under this pilot study. The first theme I would like to cover is on collaboration and transparency. This pilot study allows for an open environment of collaboration and transparency among industry and FDA. And in contrast with traditional compliance scenarios, interactions with the FDA is mainly framed on an inspection setting and actions from the agency are typically communicated in the way of FDA 43s, warning letters, untitled letters, and others. The pilot study will help enable additional transparency and collaboration, mainly around required actions and required expectations for addressing regulatory compliance issues. With this increased collaboration, it's expected this will help a site or a firm define action plans towards achieving substantial compliance. The second theme is around speed. Provided there's an increased level of collaboration, transparency among FDA and industry, we believe it will help with the speed of closure of regulatory compliance opportunities. By having everyone engaged and working together, this will help set clarity around expectations and allowing for clear roadmaps towards achieving substantial compliance. More importantly, this will also help the firm or the organization to manage effectively their resources to leverage towards achieving their remediation plans. The third theme, it's an ongoing alignment between industry and FDA. The active collaboration with both FDA and industry under this program will allow for ongoing alignment on expectations and will help shape the work ahead towards a common goal, which is achieving substantial compliance with the regulations. Fourth, the program is framed under a proven model, which has been previously described as a CIMI maturity assessment, which allows organizations to achieve excellence. This model has been used for decades and it has been shown as an effective tool to identify opportunities within an organization and also provide a helpful framework to define year-by-year plans towards excellence. In my experience with the VIP program, the CMMA model has been a foundational tool that has helped us pinpoint areas of opportunities and has allowed us to view our quality management systems from different perspectives, and more importantly, has been instrumental for us on defining year-by-year continuous improvement plans. Last but not least is how the ASC pilot program will help us all work on their shared objectives between FDA and industry. We believe that the ASC program, to be effective, both FDA and industry must keep patient safety as its primary guiding principle.
Thank you, Raymond. If you're interested in joining the pilot study, you can simply apply by going to the MDIC website, submitting your application online, and within a 2-week time period, you will be notified of your pilot study status. There are other ways to engage in the pilot study. There's a wealth of information that can be found on the websites displayed here on MDIC's website, where you can actually see the application to apply, and also the FDA website for more information, such as program summaries and FAQs. In terms of future activities, we will be hosting a workshop. The date is TBD, but we will notify attendees and participants of when that date is. And lastly, for any additional questions or concerns you may have, feel free to reach out to myself at the email address listed in the slide. Thank you. And now we have reached the polling portion of the webinar. Please note that we just have a few simple questions. They're only about 4 questions. They won't take you very long. All of your submissions will be submitted anonymously. And now that you've had the opportunity to learn more about the ASC pilot study, based on your submissions, we will use that information to leverage and kind of develop the MDIC sponsored workshop that is TBD that we mentioned in the presentation. So now we will launch the very first poll. Okay, we'll give a few more seconds to complete the poll for this particular question. Okay, second question. Okay, third polling question. Okay, we'll give a few more seconds for this question. And now our fourth and final polling question. Okay, we'll give a few more seconds for this question. Okay.
And with that, we'd like to thank you for attending the MDICX webinar on Accelerating Sustainable Capability Pilot Study. And as our presenters all noted, we definitely encourage you to reach out if you have any questions about the pilot study or if you're interested in joining. We would love for you to join us on the pilot. Thanks again for attending.